You awaken to the sound of dripping water, not the gentle kind that invites sleep, but the steady, mocking beat of drops falling from the stone ceiling into a shallow puddle near your feet. It's the only sound in the room apart from the faint rasp of your own breath. The air is damp and carries the smell of mildew, old sweat, and the faint, coppery tang of dried blood. Your body aches in strange, sharp places, your wrists throb, and when you try to move, the pull of rough iron bites into your skin. A chain, perhaps a forearm's length long, runs from the manacle at your right wrist to a metal ring set into the floor. There is no window, no sunlight, only a single lamp high on the wall, its flame so faint it trembles with every draft that snakes through the cracks in the stones. Your eyes, still heavy from sleep, or perhaps from whatever drug they gave you, struggle to focus. The floor beneath you is not flat, it's worn smooth by the feet of others who must have knelt here. Shivering, waiting, and then, footsteps. They are slow and deliberate, the soft scuff of leather sandals on stone. You lift your head to see a man emerge from the shadows of the doorway, a broad figure. Shoulders squared, a wooden staff in one hand. His tunic is plain, but his belt buckle gleams gold. His hair is shot through with gray, though his arms are still thick with muscle. His eyes look you over the way a buyer inspects an animal at market, coldly, thoroughly, without any flicker of human warmth. "You're awake," he says, his voice deep and unhurried, like a man accustomed to being obeyed. "Good, that will make the work easier. You don't yet know his name. You will, soon enough. The other slaves will tell you in whispers that this is Demetrius, the oikonomos, the household overseer. In the months to come, you will learn the subtle changes in his tone that mean you will be beaten, and the ones that mean something far worse." He crouches, eye level with you now, and tilts your chin up with the end of his staff. "You will serve," he says simply, as if it were the most obvious truth in the world. "It is better for you if you understand that now." You open your mouth to speak, but your throat is too dry, your voice nothing more than a croak. He gives a single, short nod as if satisfied, then straightens and gestures to the guard in the doorway. Two men step in, both younger, both armed. They unlock your chain from the floor, but not from your wrist. The manacle remains. You are hauled to your feet, your legs trembling from the sudden shift, and marched into a narrow corridor lit by more oil lamps. The air grows warmer as you walk, the stone walls replaced by painted plaster scenes, hunts, feasts, battles. The artistry is beautiful, almost hypnotic, but you barely see it. Somewhere deep inside you, a thought has taken root. You are no longer a person here, you are a possession. Even now, in these first minutes, part of you already senses that this is not the kind of service you once imagined servants gave to their masters. There is something in the overseer's gaze, something calculating, that hints at a future you dare not fully picture. You pass an open doorway and glimpse a courtyard beyond, white columns, a small fountain, a fig tree heavy with fruit. For a heartbeat, you imagine stepping outside, feeling the sun on your skin. But the guard shoves you forward, and the vision is gone. In that moment, you realize two things. First, you are deep inside someone's home, a wealthy home, by the size and decoration. Second, the world outside might as well be on another continent. You don't remember when the counting stopped, birthdays, harvests, the year name the priest scratched into a potsherd and propped by the shrine, but you remember before the drought. You remember waking to the sound of goats complaining and the millstone turning under your mother's hands. The smell of smoke and time, your father's shadow bending over the field with a hoe. You were small enough to fit inside a grain basket and pretend it was a boat. The olives were fagged then, the barley tall enough to whisper against your knees, and the well sang when the rope slipped over its lip. You didn't know a well could fall silent. When the rain forgot you, the village learned new sounds, the brittle sigh of stalks breaking underfoot, the soft click of empty jars, the scrape of a wooden ladle against the bottom of a pot as if scraping harder might conjure soup from air. You learned new arithmetic too. How many days a goat can go before the udder dries? How many olives fill a measure when they wrinkle to the size of fingernails? How much a boy eats when a boy tries not to eat at all? You were not special. Everyone lived at the knife's edge. A swollen ankle kept one man from his terrace long enough for weeds to win. A fever took a woman in 2 nights, and the baby followed before the olive press cooled. In good years, these were wounds a village could heal around. In bad years, they were cracks that widened, ran under thresholds, split families the way frost splits rock. You began to notice how adults spoke with their mouths and argued with their hands. Hands counting, promising, measuring debt in gestures when words would have been ashamed to say it aloud. You were sent to fetch water and came back early enough to hear your father's voice lower to the tone he used when the tax collector came. The landowner's steward sat with him on the threshold, sandals clean, wax tablet balanced on a knee, the stylus scratched as if he were carving your lives into the tablet itself. You didn't understand the ledger, but you understood your mother's eyes as she stood in the doorway, holding herself still the way she held a pot to keep it from cracking in the fire. There are many ways, you later learn, that the Greek world acquires bodies. War is honest about it. Raiders do not pretend charity. They arrive like a summer storm no one prayed for. Thracians on tough little horses. Or pirates crowding a beach before dawn. They shout in a language you do not speak, and by sunset the elders are counting the missing. Another way is quieter, a winter too long, a harvest too thin, a man with a ledger and a suggestion wrapped in silk words. He says, service, and contract, and only until the debt. It sounds like a rope thrown to a drowning swimmer. It is a rope, yes, but not for that purpose. You were 12 then, and beauty had already made itself a kind of currency you didn't know you carried. Older women pinched your cheek and said you had your mother's eyes. Men said you would be tall like your father. Praise felt harmless, like a breeze. You didn't yet know the way some men watch as if calculating interest. The first things to go were the animals. Your father led the sheep down to the steward's yard while your little brother cried because he'd named them all. Next went the necklaces your grandmother kept in a cloth tied at the back of a shelf. The thread smelled of cedar when it was untied. And you watched the sunlight catch on hammered bronze like the last light on a river. After that, the useful things. The spare loom weights, the better jar, the extra cloak, each sale bought a week, sometimes 2, and then the weeks were gone like water poured into sand. Some nights your mother stood under the fig tree and watched the road. You thought she was praying for rain. Maybe she was praying for the men the road eventually brings. The ones your father always called vultures, and then later, when the clay jars stayed empty too many days in a row, called buyers without spitting. They did not come at once. They let hunger do its work. Hunger is a patient recruiter. Meanwhile the world shrank. The village square, once loud with bargaining and gossip, learned to whisper. Children stopped racing between houses because energy became a coin you spent only when you must. The women's hands grew thinner. Tyndon and Bain making maps you could trace with a fingertip. You learned the names of winds that meant nothing to you before. Winds that stole clouds. Winds that lied about rain. Winds that turned smoke sideways and into your eyes. You found your reflection in the well stone when there was no water to show you more clearly. Your cheekbones had become edges. Your shoulders had learned to round. When you laughed, your mother put a hand on your face as if the sound might evaporate and leave you weaker. Your father stopped singing while he worked. He started counting differently, as if every task had become an equation. How much strength does this action buy? And how much does it cost? There were other stories, cautionary tales traded in low voices so the children wouldn't hear. A cousin taken on the coastal road when pirates came ashore for fresh water. A girl who never returned from the spring, whose bracelet turned up in the port 2 months later on the wrist of a maid who said she had purchased it honestly. Nobody said the word slave out loud in the daylight. At night, the word came easier, as if darkness could muffle it the way a blanket muffles a baby's cry. The first time you saw a chain up close, it was not around a neck. It lay coiled on the back of a merchant's mule, harmless as a sleeping snake. You touched it when no one watched and were surprised that metal could feel warm, that it held the sun like a memory. You did not yet understand how a thing could be both an object and a prophecy. Your father began to avoid your eyes. You thought at first it was because you had started to look at him like an equal, weighing what he could bear, measuring what he could not. But it was more than shame. It was the terrible arithmetic he was carrying alone, an account in which numbers had begun to have faces. He was a decent man in a place where decency had no leverage. When he finally spoke, it was not to you, it was to your mother behind a closed door, and you learned the shape of sentences from the way their shadows moved under the crack, his shadow standing, hers turned away, the long pause that meant both of them were listening for a miracle and hearing only silence. Your own body betrayed you with the stubbornness of youth. You kept growing, bones lengthened, muscles found new angles, strength arrived, useless strength, the kind that makes work quick in good years and makes you a commodity in bad ones. You began to see yourself the way others might. Sound teeth, bright eyes, clever hands, the grace you thought was only for running barefoot downhill. You were becoming, without consent, valuable. The road finally brought them. Not a raiding party, no shouts, no weapons brandished, men who smelled of expensive oil and mule sweat, with records tucked into their belts like folded birds. One wore a ring that flashed purple glass in the sun, pretending to be amethyst. Their sandals were new. They spoke your dialect well enough to joke with the elders and poorly enough to remind you they could leave when they wished. They did not go to the shrine. They went to the steward. The steward went to your father. The words were ordinary. They were the kind of words men use when they want to sound as if they are doing you a favor. Contract, term, skill, wage, return, a boy's work in the city until the dead breathes easier, lessons in a wealthy house, how to pour wine without spilling, how to stand properly, how to remember the names of men who require bowing. A future. There is always a future in such talk. It is the bait in the trap. You listened from the doorway and felt your chest tighten as if a hand had reached through your ribs and squeezed. You were old enough to hear the hollow under the words, young enough to hope the hollowness hid treasure. You started sleeping badly, your dreams filled with doors that opened into other doors, with stairs that led down when you tried to climb up. Your brother began clinging to your tunic when you left to fetch water. You untangled his fingers gently and told him you would be right back. The way your mother told you the rain would come. You stopped asking questions because the answers had started to arrive as looks instead of sentences, looks that slid off you, looks that disappeared over your shoulder, looks that treated you as if you were already a past tense. You could have been taken by raiders. Many were. You could have been snatched on the road to the mill, pulled behind a rock and carried to a ship where the sea would borrow your name and not return it. You were not. Your village did not need violence to deliver you. It needed hunger and the smoothness of men who help parents call desperation, care. On the morning the fig leaves curled inward like tight fists, your mother combed your hair with her own fingers because the wooden comb had been traded for a half sack of barley. She hummed the song she had used when you were feverish as a child. Your father sat on the threshold and sharpened his knife very carefully, though there was nothing left to cut. When a cart creaked into the square and the mule snorted clouds into the dusty air, you knew without being told. Your father stood, then sat, then stood again. Your mother wiped her hands on her skirt, though there was nothing on them. You reached for something to hold on to and found only yourself. You had not yet learned how long a road can be from a door to a cart. You would learn. You had not yet learned that an agreement can become a cage. You would learn that too, but for now there was only the heat around your temples. The way sound shrank to the clink of buckles and the scratch of a stylus on wax. And your own name spoken in a tone that already sounded like farewell. You told yourself, as you followed the men toward the square, that it was a season, a term, a task, because that is what you were told. Because hope is a language parents teach children even when the grammar is a lie. The figs were sweet that year, sweeter than they had any right to be. You tasted one as you passed the tree and thought, absurdly, that perhaps sweetness meant the gods were not offended. You did not look back, or if you did, you do not admit it even to yourself. Somewhere past the olive grove, the road makes its first turn. That is where the village disappears from view. That is where the bargains made by other people take on the weight of your own body. That is where you understand the simplest truth of your age. You are not being chosen for work. You are being chosen for possession. The cart jolts, dust rises, the men talk about prices as if the numbers were sheep to be counted and sheared. You sit very straight because you were taught to sit straight at the shrine. You keep your hands around your knees because you were taught to be polite in front of visitors. This is also politeness, you tell yourself. This is also visiting. You taste the fig again in your throat and swallow hard. The road keeps going. That is what roads do. Your village dissolves behind you like smoke. Ahead lies a city you have never seen and a house with walls thick enough to hold the silence that will soon be asked of you. You are not ready. No one is ready. Readiness is a word men use to make themselves feel less monstrous. You do not pray for rescue. Not yet. You pray for explanation. The gods are not in the business of explanation. They are in the business of weather. The cart turns again, and the last familiar stone disappears. Your mother's voice is a thread pulled tight in your mind. Your father's hands are knots you cannot untie. You close your eyes and try to picture the well when it was full. You open them to the rattle of harness and the gentle, almost tender, clink of chain. It is the first time you hear it. It will not be the last. The road does not ask the name of the one who travels it. It only stretches forward, taut as a rope already tied at the other end. And you are the knot being pulled. The cart wheels grind over loose stones, each turn sending a faint shiver through the wooden frame. Now and then, a deep rut jolts you sharply, making you bite the inside of your cheek to keep silent. The men in front speak without lowering their voices. Their words are not meant for you. They talk of prices, routes, the weather in other valleys, casual, almost lazy, as if what sits behind them is nothing more than a load of grain. One of them laughs at a joke you cannot catch. His teeth are good. That, you think, is another kind of wealth. On either side of the road, the land wears the same tired skin you left behind in the village. Olive trees thin as brush strokes. Fields scabbed with rock, streams that look more like scars than water. The air smells of dust and old time. You tell yourself not to look back, but sometimes your head turns without asking your permission. The village is gone now, folded behind the ridges. Only the road is left, and the knowledge that it points toward a place whose name you have heard but never touched. Midday comes, and the men stop in a patch of shade barely large enough for the mule. They eat olives in bread so hard it snaps when bitten. One hands you a strip without looking at you. You chew slowly, not because you want to savor it, but because swallowing too quickly would end it too soon. When the road climbs, the city shows itself, first as a smudge, then a line, then shapes that rise like teeth from the horizon. The sight makes something in your chest tighten, though you do not yet know if it is fear or something dangerously like hope. Walls, taller than any tree you have seen. Towers that cut the sky. The sun flashing on tiled roofs in bronze. The men talk more now, their voices sharper, counting distances, estimating the time before the gates close for evening. One glances back at you, his eyes measuring, as if checking a purchase before market. You drop your gaze. You wonder, absurdly, if the city will smell different, if it will smell of the sea, or of bread, or of the sweat of too many bodies packed behind stone. You wonder where you will sleep, whether you will see stars again. The cart keeps moving, the walls grow larger, the road ahead narrows into shadow under the gate's arch. You take a breath just before you pass under it, as though the air beyond will be heavier and you will need all the lightness you can store. The city swallows you whole. The moment the cart passes beneath the arch, the air changes. It is heavier, pressed close by walls and narrow streets, and full of smells you cannot separate: smoke from hearths, brine from fish stalls, the musk of bodies that have worked all day in heat and dust. Voices collide and echo between stone buildings, shouts from binders, laughter from doorways, the sharp cry of a child. The road becomes a maze, winding between rows of shops and taverns. Here, the buildings lean toward each other like conspirators, their upper floors so close that only a blade of sky cuts through above you. You glimpse flashes of movement, hands passing bread from window to street, a woman pouring water into a jar, boys chasing one another between the legs of mules. Your cart slows in the crush of the marketplace. Bronze lamps swing above stalls, their light turning piles of figs and amphorae of oil into small treasures. The men guarding you are silent now, their attention fixed ahead. You try not to stare, but your eyes catch on everything: the marble steps of a temple, the colored tunics of the merchants, the glint of a soldier's spear, and always, in the corner of your vision, the manacle at your wrist, its dull metal swallowing the lamplight. Eventually the cart turns off the main road and into a quieter street lined with larger houses. Here, the air smells less of smoke and more of pressed flowers, crushed underfoot by the servants who sweep the doorways. The houses are high-walled, their gates carved with patterns you do not understand. The cart stops before one of these gates. The overseer, Demetrius, stands waiting, flanked by two more men. His eyes flick over you once, and he nods as though a box has been ticked. You are led through the gate into a courtyard lit by torches. The fountain you glimpsed earlier is here, its water catching the firelight in quick flashes. The sound is soft, almost kind, but it only sharpens the contrast with the rough hand gripping your arm. You are taken through a side door, down a hallway where the walls are painted with scenes of hunts and banquets. Somewhere, faintly, you hear music, a lyre, slow and delicate. It feels far away, like a memory you can't quite hold. The room they put you in is small, its ceiling low, its floor bare except for a mat and a thin blanket. A single oil lamp burns in the corner, casting the walls in trembling light. The door is not locked, but the guard's shadow outside tells you it might as well be. You sit on the mat, the chain on your wrist pulling in your lap. Your eyes grow heavy, but sleep does not come. You listen to the sounds of the house, the laughter from somewhere deep within, the footsteps in the corridor, the faint trickle of the courtyard fountain, and you understand something you did not before. The city is not freedom, it is a different kind of cage, and its bars are invisible. Morning comes without sunlight. The room has no window, only a narrow slit near the ceiling that lets in a ribbon of pale light, enough to tell you the night is over, but not enough to feel the warmth of it. The sound that wakes you is not birdsong, but the clatter of clay jars somewhere beyond the door, followed by the murmur of voices. The guard outside shifts, and the door opens. A woman stands there, older than you by at least 20 years, her hair bound in a scarf. Her eyes are dark and quick, her expression unreadable. She holds out a wooden bowl of bread soaked in watered wine. "You'll eat," she says, not as an order, but as a fact. You take the bowl and begin to chew, and she watches you as though measuring the speed and steadiness of each bite. Only when you've finished does she speak again. "Follow me." You step into the corridor and find yourself among others, 4 or 5 men and women, all in plain tunics, their hair tied back. None speak, but you feel their eyes on you, assessing, filing you somewhere in the quiet hierarchy that lives here. The woman leads you through a series of courtyards, each more elaborate than the last. One is lined with fig trees, their fruit wrapped in cloth to keep off birds. Another has a tiled pool where geese drift lazily. Servants move silently around them, sweeping, carrying jugs, arranging baskets of herbs. Finally, you enter a long room open to the air on one side, where a table stretches almost the length of the wall. Cushions are piled for reclining, and on the table are bowls of olives, cheese, and honey, breakfast for the household's master. Demetrius is here, speaking quietly to a younger man with the same sharp cheekbones and broad shoulders. When his eyes fall on you, he gestures you closer. "This one is new," he says to the young man, "as if you are not present, strong enough for the kitchen work, perhaps later for heavier duties." The young man nods once, then turns away. Your fate has been decided in less than 10 words. You are assigned to the kitchen. The air there is thick with smoke from the hearth, the smell of baking bread, and the constant hiss of water meeting hot metal. The work is immediate, no time for questions. You fetch water from the courtyard cistern, grind barley into flour, scrub pots until your fingers ache. In the hours that follow, you begin to notice the subtle order among the slaves. The older ones speak little, moving with the efficiency of habit. The younger ones watch more, listen more, speak less. The woman who brought you bread, her name is Doria, seems to know everyone's place and everyone's weakness. At midday, you carry a tray to the master's dining room. He does not look at you when you place it before him. His guests are laughing at some story, their rings catching the sunlight. As you back away, you realize they have not even glanced at your face. Later, in the narrow courtyard between the kitchen and the storerooms, you find Doria again. She is kneading dough, her hands white with flour. Without looking up, she says, "Keep your head down, learn fast, and remember, walls have ears in this house, but so do people. The right ear can save you, the wrong one can end you." It is the first piece of advice you've been given. You do not yet know whether to be grateful or afraid. The test comes sooner than you expect. It begins with a missing amphora of oil. Such things are not rare in a household this size. Food, cloth, small tools, they vanish sometimes, claimed by rats or carelessness. But this amphora is different. It was part of a shipment from Rhodes, its seal unbroken, its contents meant for the master's own table. You hear about it in fragments, snatches of conversation in the kitchen. The tense stillness in the storeroom when Demetrius steps in. He questions everyone, his voice calm but his eyes sharp as a blade's edge. When he reaches you, you can feel the weight of the other servants' stares. "Where were you last night after the evening meal?" The question is simple, but you understand, somehow, that the truth is not enough here. You were in your small room, alone. You have no proof of this, no one to confirm it. In this house, absence of proof can become proof of guilt. Before you can answer, Doria speaks from across the room. "He was with me," she says, not looking up from the bread she's slicing, "helping me prepare for the morning." It is a lie. You do not know why she says it, but Demetrius seems satisfied. He nods once and moves on. Later, when the kitchens have gone quiet, you find her kneading dough again, her hands working with steady rhythm. "Why?" you ask. Her eyes flick to yours, then away. "Because I decided you were worth the trouble. For now." She leans closer, lowering her voice. "Listen carefully. Someone in this house wants you gone. Maybe because you're new, maybe because they need someone to blame for what they've taken. This will happen again. Next time, you'll need to be ready before the question comes." That night, lying on your mat, you turn her words over in your mind. You realize there is no safety in simply keeping your head down. Silence can protect you for a while, but it also makes you invisible to those who might help. You will have to choose allies, and you will have to do it before someone else chooses you as an enemy. The chance comes in the form of a broken jug. It happens in the mid-morning bustle, when servants rush between kitchen and storerooms. A boy, no more than 12, stumbles under the weight of a full water jar. It slips from his grasp, shatters on the stone floor, and the water spreads in a cold sheet across the courtyard. The boy freezes. You know that look. It's the same one you wore when Demetrius questioned you about the missing oil. Fear, raw and choking. A kitchen overseer storms over, ready to demand whose fault it was. Before the boy can speak, You step forward. It was my fault, you say, already crouching to gather the shards. I bumped his arm. He couldn't hold it. The overseer's glare shifts to you. Then you'll fetch another. Now, you go to the cistern, refill the jar, and carry it back without another word. The boy is gone, vanished into the churn of work, but later, when the midday meal is over, you find a small wedge of bread and a fig tucked beneath your blanket. Not much, but more than nothing. That evening, Doria notices, you're making friends, she says, her tone somewhere between approval and warning. Friends are useful, you answer. Friends, she says, can also get you killed. You want to ask her which she thinks this boy will be. But before you can, a shadow passes across the doorway. It's the young man you saw with Demetrius on your first day, the one who barely looked at you. The master's guests are staying late, he says. We need more wine in the triclinium. He points at you. Come with me. The triclinium is warm with torchlight and the smell of roasted meat. The guests lounge on cushions, speaking in low, rich voices. You keep your eyes down as you pour, but your ears catch fragments. Shipments arriving from the coast, a dispute over land, a name you don't recognize but will remember. As you step back from the table, you feel a hand grip your wrist, gentle, but firm. One of the guests is studying you, his gaze assessing. New, he asks. Yes, Lord, you answer. He smiles, slow and knowing. Fresh faces do not stay fresh for long in this house. The words follow you back to the kitchen like a shadow. You are beginning to understand that survival here is not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about being seen by the right people and unseen by the wrong ones. The opportunity arrives at night, wrapped in quiet. You're carrying a stack of cleaned cups back to the kitchen when you hear voices in the peristyle courtyard. The moonlight spills across the marble floor, pulling around two figures, Demetrius and the guest who had gripped your wrist earlier that evening. You pause in the shadow of a column. Their words are low, but the sound carries in the still air. Arrives at the harbor tomorrow, the guest is saying, before the master's men can claim it. You understand? Demetrius's reply is a whisper, but the tone is clear. Agreement. You realize you are hearing something you should not. A private arrangement, a shipment, the kind of knowledge that, in the wrong or right hands, could change your standing. A breath escapes you before you can stop it. Demetrius's head snaps around. You melt back into the darkness, pressing against the cold stone. When you risk a glance, he is staring toward your hiding place, his face unreadable. Then the guest murmurs something, and Demetrius turns away. You walk quickly to the kitchen, your mind burning with the choice now before you. Tell the master, and you could gain his trust, or at least his notice. But if Demetrius learns you spoke, your life here would be short and unpleasant. Tell no one, and you remain in the shadows. But shadows are where people like you disappear without a sound. Later, in the dim of your small room, you find the boy from the courtyard waiting in the doorway. He says nothing, just slips you a scrap of cloth with a single word stitched into it. Careful. Then he's gone. You lie awake long into the night, the cloth warm in your hand, weighing the risk of action against the cost of silence. By dawn, you know you must choose. When dawn comes, you choose. The house is still in its slow waking. Servants fetching water. The faint scrape of sandals on stone. The smell of baking bread drifting from the kitchen hearth. You move as though to join the morning work, but your steps take you instead toward the inner courtyard, the one with the fig trees and the shaded benches where the master sometimes receives messages. He is there now, speaking with a steward. Demetrius is nowhere in sight. You wait until the steward leaves, then step forward. The master looks up, mildly surprised to see you. Yes, your voice is steady, though your heart is pounding hard enough to feel in your throat. Lord, last night I overheard something in the courtyard, about a shipment, arriving at the harbor before your men can claim it. The master's gaze sharpens. Pooh, you hesitate for only a heartbeat. Demetrius, And your guest from last night. A slow silence follows. Then the master smiles, but it's not the kind of smile that warms the air. It's the kind that chills it. I see. He dismisses you with a flick of his hand. Go, and speak of this to no one. You return to the kitchen, forcing your face into the same neutral mask as the others. But inside, every sound makes you jump. A footstep behind you. The shift of shadows near the doorway. It is not until late afternoon that you understand the weight of your choice. Demetrius is summoned to the master's chambers and does not return for hours. When he finally reappears, his face is calm, but his eyes sweep the room until they find you. The look he gives you is brief, unreadable, and somehow worse than open rage. That night, Doria appears at your door. She closes it behind her, leans against the wall, and studies you. You've moved, she says quietly. You've put yourself on the board. You ask her what she means. It means, she says, that from now on, someone will be watching every step you take, and someone else will be waiting for you to stumble. She leaves you with those words, and the room feels smaller once she's gone. You realize this is no longer about surviving unseen. You've stepped into the game, and there is no stepping back. It starts with the bread. At first glance, nothing is wrong. The loaf left for you at the end of the day is just like the others, warm from the oven. Crust browned, the smell faintly sweet, but when you tear it open, there's an acrid bitterness in the air, sharp enough to sting your nose. You've been here long enough to know the difference between fresh grain and something altered. You leave it untouched. By morning, a rumor is drifting through the kitchen. One of the stable hands is sick, badly. Pale, sweating, barely able to stand. He'd eaten a piece of bread from the same batch. You don't ask questions. You don't need to. Instead, you work faster than usual. Keep your head lower, and let the conversations pass over you. Still, you feel eyes on your back, sometimes from the doorway, sometimes from the far side of the courtyard. By evening, Demetrius calls you to the storeroom. You've been busy, he says, examining a jar of olives as though it requires all his attention. The master seems interested in you. That's rare. He sets the jar down, steps closer. Be careful, little fish. Big fish don't always eat because they're hungry. Sometimes they bite just to see you bleed. You leave without answering. That night, the boy, the same one who warned you before, slips into your room again. This time, he brings no gift, no bread or fig, just a whisper. They'll try again. When you ask who, he only shakes his head. Don't drink from the pitchers in the kitchen tomorrow. Then he's gone. Lying in the dark, you realize two things. First, someone is actively trying to remove you. Second, someone else is just as determined to keep you alive. The question is why. It happens during the evening meal. The household is gathered in the long hall, servants moving in practiced loops between the kitchen and the low tables. The master reclining with his favored guests. The air is thick with the scent of roasted lamb and honeyed wine. And the sound of conversation overlaps like threads in a tapestry. You're carrying a jug of watered wine toward the master's table when the shouting starts. One of the kitchen girls, thin, nervous, no older than you, stumbles into the hall. Clutching her stomach, she gasps something you can't hear, then collapses at the foot of the table. The guests draw back. The master sits up sharply. Demetrius is already on his feet, calling for help, but there's something in his eyes, calculation, not concern. She drank from the kitchen pitchers. Someone says. The words drop into the room like a stone into a still pond. Every gaze turns, slowly, toward you. It's the perfect setup. The poisoned bread hadn't worked, so now it's the wine and you. Conveniently, we're seen carrying it. You force yourself to speak before the silence becomes an accusation. Lord, I did not pour her drink. Demetrius steps forward, voice smooth. Perhaps not, but perhaps you prepared the pitchers earlier. Your pulse hammers in your ears. If you deny too much, it will sound like guilt. If you say too little, it will sound like confession. Then, unexpectedly, Doria rises from her place at the wall. "No," she says, clear enough for the hall to hear. "The boy was with me, cleaning the storeroom. The pictures were in my sight the whole time." A murmur ripbles through the room. The master looks between you and Demetrius, his gaze sharp. Finally, he waves a hand. "Enough. See to the girl. And Demetrius, find out who did this." Quietly, the tension breaks, but not for you. Later, in the shadowed corridor outside the kitchen, Doria stops you. "That's twice now I've saved you," she says. "The next time will cost you." Before you can ask what she means, she's gone, leaving you with the sick certainty that her price will be high, and that you might have to pay it. Doria waits 3 days before collecting. It's the kind of waiting that makes the skin itch. Long enough for you to start thinking she might have forgotten, but not long enough to believe it's true. When she finally speaks, it's at dawn, while the kitchen is still dim and quiet. "Tonight," she says without looking at you, "you'll go to the harbor." You keep your voice low. "Why?" "Because I need a message delivered, and I can't send anyone they'd recognize." She hands you a small, wax-sealed tablet. The seal is plain, no markings, no clue to the sender or recipient. "You'll give this to a man waiting by the 3rd mooring post from the fish market. Tall, with a scar on his chin. Say nothing else. And if I don't," Doria finally meets your eyes, "then I stop making it my problem to keep you breathing." That night, you slip out through the back gate, the tablet hidden in your tunic. The streets are quieter than usual, a damp wind carrying the smell of salt and tar from the harbor. You find the man easily enough, tall, broad-shouldered, the scar pale against his dark beard. He takes the tablet without a word, but instead of leaving, he studies you for a moment. "You're the one who told the master about the shipment," he says softly. Your stomach tightens. "I don't know what you mean." He smiles faintly, as if you've confirmed something just by answering. "Tell Doria I'll consider her request. And tell her," he pauses, leaning close enough that you can smell the sea on his breath. "She's playing with fire." Then he's gone, vanishing into the maze of boats and shadows. You return to the house by the back gate, but someone has been waiting in the alley. Demetrius. He steps into your path, blocking the door. "Out for a walk?" he asks, his tone mild but his eyes hard. Your mind races for an answer. The alley is narrow, hemmed in by high plastered walls. The only light comes from the moon, and it paints Demetrius's face in silver and shadow. "Out for a walk?" he repeats, his tone just as calm, but you can feel the coiled thread in it now. You force a shrug. "Needed air. The kitchen's hot at night." Demetrius steps closer, slow and deliberate, until you can see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. "And the air took you to the harbor?" You don't answer. He watches your silence like a cat watching a trapped bird. "I could call the guard," he says softly. "Tell them I found a thief creeping back through the master's date." You know what they do to thieves. His voice is too casual. "This isn't about the guard. It's about what you'll give him to avoid them." "What do you want?" you ask. His smile is small and sharp. "Information. You've seen things, heard things, things you told the master. I want to know what else you might tell him." You realize then that this is more than suspicion. He's testing you, probing to see whether you're a threat or a tool. "I told him nothing worth remembering," you say. Demetrius studies you for a long moment. Then, with an abrupt shift, he steps aside, clearing the way to the gate. "We'll see," he says. "For now, keep your eyes open and your mouth closed. And if you must choose between me and Doria, choose wisely." You pass him without looking back, but your thoughts churn. 2 people now claim your loyalty, and both have the means to destroy you. Worse, you've given each just enough reason to keep watching you. That night, as you lie awake, you hear faint footsteps in the corridor. They stop outside your door. A pause, then they move on. You're not sure which of them it was. The summons comes at midday. You're scrubbing the floor tiles in the outer hall when a boy, one of the errand runners, appears with a message. Demetrius wants you, now. He's waiting in the shade of the colonnade, hands folded behind his back, expression unreadable. You're going to the market, he says without greeting. There's a man there selling figs from the eastern farms. He carries more than fruit. You'll take a small pouch from him and bring it straight to me. You start to ask what's in the pouch, but he cuts you off. Don't look inside. Don't speak to anyone. Don't linger. As you turn to go, another voice calls from across the courtyard. Doria. She approaches with the ease of someone who knows she'll be heard. You've got strong legs, she says lightly. Good. I need you to go to the market for me as well. Find the fig seller. He'll give you a small pouch. You'll bring it to me. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. And if Demetrius asks why you were there, tell him you saw nothing worth remembering. 2 orders, 1 fig seller, 1 pouch. You feel the trap closing. Whichever path you choose will brand you. In the market, the fig seller is easy to spot. An older man with sunburned skin. His stall shaded by a patched awning. When you approach, he doesn't greet you, just reaches under the table and produces the pouch. It's small, the weight shifting like sand. Behind you, the murmur of the market seems to fade, replaced by the pounding in your ears. You can deliver it to Demetrius. You can deliver it to Doria. Or you can do something neither of them expects. You slip the pouch inside your tunic. For a moment, you just stand there in the press of strangers, the whole city moving around you, and you realize this might be the first time the next step belongs entirely to you. You leave the market by the narrowest street you can find, pressed between cracked walls hung with laundry that sways in the wind. The pouch feels heavier than it should, each step making its contents shift and whisper against the fabric. Halfway back, you duck into the shadow of a tanner's shed. The smell is acrid, sharp enough to sting your eyes, but it's a good place to be invisible. You untie the pouch. Inside, not gold, not jewels, a powder the color of dried blood, fine enough to cling to your fingertips. It smells faintly sweet, almost pleasant, which only makes you more certain it's dangerous. Now you know why neither Doria nor Demetrius wanted questions. You could throw it into the gutter and be done with both of them. But in this house, information is worth more than coin, and you've just found something they clearly value. By the time you reach the outer gate, you've made your choice. If you give the pouch to Demetrius, his smile will be slow, satisfied, and you will feel the weight of an unspoken bargain settling over you. If you give it to Doria, her eyes will gleam with something between amusement and warning, and she'll speak as though you've passed a test you didn't know you were taking. If you keep it, you'll have both their attention and their suspicion burning into your back from that moment on. You cross the courtyard, the decision burning in your palm, and that's when you see them both waiting, Demetrius in the colonnade, Doria near the well, watching you approach, each certain the pouch is theirs. There's no more time to decide. You stand in the courtyard, the pouch hidden under your tunic, the weight of it pulling at you like a stone in water. Demetrius waits in the colonnade, hands behind his back, face a mask of polite expectation. Doria waits by the well, her smile like the curve of a knife. Both see you, both know you've come from the market, both expect to win. You take a breath and walk to Doria. Her eyes flicker, just slightly, when you press the pouch into her hand. She doesn't open it, doesn't even glance down, just slips it into the folds of her robe. Well done, she says, then, lower, so only you hear. Now you're mine. Behind you, Demetrius turns away, too quickly for it to be casual. That night, the house feels different, the air thicker. You hear raised voices from the master's quarters, Demetrius's sharp, clipped tone, and another voice, deeper, angrier. By dawn, the servants are whispering, a man is dead in the city, a man with a scar on his chin, and Doria is smiling over breakfast. Demetrius finds you in the herb storeroom, mid-morning, no preamble, no polite smile. You killed him. The words are so flat, So certain, they don't even sound like an accusation, more like a verdict. I don't, you start. But he's already stepping forward, crowding the narrow space. I know what was in that pouch, he says, and I know you gave it to her, which means you chose her over me. He pulls something from his sleeve, a strip of waxed cloth, folded around a pinch of red powder, enough to hang you, or worse. Your pulse is a drumbeat in your ears. What do you want? A choice, Demetrius says. You help me bring Doria down, or I make sure the master hears exactly what you carried into this house. From the doorway behind him, a voice cuts in, low, amused, dangerous. She won't be helping you, Doria says. She's holding a dagger, small but bright in the dim light. Because you, Demetrius, have just run out of time. The three of you stand frozen, the air thick with the smell of dried rosemary and iron. One wrong move, and the story ends here. The storeroom feels too small for 3 people, too heavy with the scent of herbs and the weight of choices. Demetrius shifts, just enough to angle his body toward you, away from Doria's blade. Think, girl, he says, voice urgent but low. She'll use you and cut you loose the moment you're no longer useful. Doria laughs softly. And he won't? He's been trying to put you in the noose since the night he found you in the alley. Your hand hovers near the shelf behind you. On it, glass jars, bundles of dried roots, a stone pestle heavy enough to break a man's jaw. You could side with Demetrius. You could side with Doria. Or you could end this yourself. The moment stretches, taut as a bowstring. Then you move. The pestle slams into the lamp on the wall. Flame bursts, oil hissing as it spills. Both of them flinch back, curses sharp in the smoke. You slip between them, out into the hall, the fire's heat chasing you. By the time the servants rush to douse the blaze, you're already gone, through the side gate, into the press of the city streets. No pouch, no masters, no chains. Behind you, the house burns in more ways than one. You don't know who will survive, or if they'll come for you later. But for now, you walk into the crowd. Just another face no one will remember. For the first time since you arrived, the next step is entirely yours.